This morning, of course, we have Josh Kolsrud here in the studio. Josh, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you too.
Justin Lum as well, investigator. Good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we're going to talk about the Vallow case, of course, in just a few moments. Another big day as we start this new week. But what is too hot for both of you?
95, I think, is already.
95, spoken, yeah.
I'm a California kid, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, I feel like if I walk out the front door in the morning with my suit on and I immediately start sweating, it's too hot.
It's too hot. You're done. You're like, take me back home. Let me jump in the pool. Let's talk a little bit about the case and what's to be expected here this morning, Justin.
Yeah, so right now we are waiting for Officer Ryan Pillar with the Gilbert Police Department continue his testimony. He's the lead agent on this case regarding Brandon Boudreaux, who was shot at on October 2nd, 2019. The bullet missed him by inches, and he's Lori Daybell's former nephew-in-law. And he just came out of Friday cross-examined by his former aunt-in-law. And, you know, that type of trauma, we talked about it just earlier. I mean, you have this pro se defendant doing cross on witnesses. That's one thing. But here's the lone survivor in this bizarre saga that after 5 years, or more than 5 years, gets to face her one-on-one and answer her questions. It is fascinating.
It is fascinating. And I'll tell you, in the 18 years of practicing criminal law, I've never seen a pro per defendant get an opportunity to cross-examine a victim. And, that's what's happening here. And I'll tell you, I watched the cross-examination and I watched Brandon Boudreaux's testimony, and he did an excellent job. He was calm, he was composed, his answers were thoughtful. And, it's very tough being a victim and testifying on the witness stand anyway, let alone having to answer questions to the person who arguably orchestrated the attempted murder on your life. Yeah. So he did a great job, and I thought his testimony was really pivotal in the case.
Is he like a silver bullet when you look at it to this case? I mean, when you mentioned he's the only, live person involved, in terms of a witness that may have experienced something, how important is his testimony?
Yeah, he was a key factor as well when you look at the big picture of helping law enforcement agencies, multiple law enforcement agencies, look into the disappearance of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, the kids Lori Vallow murdered in September 2019. And just so everyone knows, today it's been 5 years since their bodies were found on Chad Daybell's property, June 9th, 2020. He had identified JJ's body for the family. I mean, he was a part of this family. He's been traumatized just as much as everyone. And so he basically got Gilbert Police to work with Idaho authorities and say, I know about this woman who was my former relative, and now she's just gotten married to this so-called doomsday prophet. And guess what? That man's wife is dead. I've been shot at. These two kids we haven't heard from since the summer. I mean, he was really a key factor in this. And I also want to mention just last Friday, Lori was removed from court. I mean, have you seen something like that? We know this judge has been accommodating, to say the least, but he had enough, clearly, with how she's sort of demanded things and had an attitude with him.
Sure. Judge Justin Boudreaux, excuse me, is an excellent judge, and he has had a very calm demeanor throughout the entire process. Now, what happened was that Judge Boudreaux was telling Miss Vallow that she couldn't do something, and we saw Miss Vallow's full personality on display really for the first time, where she talked back to the judge and she literally told him that he cannot talk to her that way, that he was yelling at her. And Judge Boudreaux corrected her and said that he wasn't yelling at her, and then he did admonish her that she has not been polite to him, to say the least, throughout the proceedings. Now he did remove her from the courtroom. However, he did say you're being removed for the purpose of talking to your attorneys, and I expect you to be back in the courtroom in 15 minutes. Yeah. And importantly, this wasn't done in the presence of the jury. Yeah. But it's also important, though, because it shows the viewers, the people that are actually watching this trial on TV and talking about it now, to really be able to see who this person really is. Like, we're seeing the true Lori Vallow on display, especially in that moment.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. Janelle Art in the chat box said her removal was definitely something we don't see every day in a courtroom, right? There's so many firsts when it comes to this court case. I believe we have some sound from court that day. Can we go ahead and play that for us this morning?
I open the door. Do I get a hearing? We stop trial and I get a hearing on... stop. We'll have a very short hearing, okay? If you're going to introduce how you have great character and good character, we're going to have a short hearing on what evidence that they can bring in to rebut that character, which could include being convicted of 4 murders. So
and would you
talk to your advisory counsel during the break. And
you don't need to yell at me either.
I'm at you, okay?
Yeah, you are, and you do not need to talk to me that way. I'm very courteous. I'm very courteous to you.
No, you have been nothing near courteous to me during the course of these proceedings.
So this is pretty wild because I almost feel like it's a parent-child, you have bad character, you're being mean to me type of, you're talking to me in a negative way. And then the judge just removes her. What leads him? Justin, were you in court when this happened?
No, I was watching it here, but I can tell you this has been building up for a while. This was the boiling point between Judge Bresky and Lori Daybell. She has tried to get him removed from the case 3 times, and it failed again because trial has already started, and Judge Jennifer Green said, you don't really have a legal basis here to remove him. You're saying he's been biased towards you and he's, not granted your motions in the past year or so, but that's not enough to remove him. And Bresky has said, even if this trial were to be delayed by your sickness, I'm going to be the judge on this case. You've dealt with him in the courtroom, I assume. Just how important is it for him to stay? Obviously we know he needs to stay calm and have a cool demeanor as a judge. There's an expectation, but for appeal reasons, just to not fall for any sort of bait.
Exactly. And, Judge Bresky has to have control over his courtroom. And for whatever reason, Ms. Vallow in this case is really acting out in a way that she didn't in her previous cases. And I'll give you an example. Starting with her opening statement, there were at least 5 or 6 objections from the prosecutor that, she was, violating the rules of procedure and evidence. And Ms. Vallow, despite the judge sustaining those objections, that is, agreeing with the suggestions or objections, she continued to ask the same questions, to say the same statements. And if a lawyer would have done that in court, they would have been referred to the state bar for unethical conduct. And so Judge Bresky has is tired of her behavior. She is now doing this on a regular basis. If you saw her cross-examination of Brandon Boudreaux last week, Lori was really trying to get into character evidence, Rule 405. And the reason why that's important is because if she opens that door, it'll allow the prosecution to bring in evidence of the 4 previous homicides, connecting her to every single one. But so, Lori wants to have it both ways. She wants to be able to bring in evidence of her good character and evidence that Melanie, her niece, had something to do with this without opening that door. But she can't do it both ways.
Because once a Pandora's box is open, you can't just choose what comes out. It's like everything is out in the open.
You can't unring the bell.
And Trina Kay is just waiting for her to do it and get the green light. And that will, imagine the jury hearing that, she killed her children.
And Trina Kay has done an excellent job with restraint. I think that she already has enough to bring in the character evidence. But when you're dealing with a pro per, they're giving a little bit more leeway than a lawyer would. So if Lori Vallow was represented by an attorney and an attorney attempted to do what she just did last week, Judge Bresky, would automatically allow that character evidence to come in, no doubt.
As just a viewer, obviously you spend a lot of time in court, Josh, and Justin, you as well. But as a viewer, like everybody else out there who's watching this case, when you see a judge stand up, I think you think, oh my gosh, this is serious business. I think his body language, even more than his words, may have said something strong as well. Have you witnessed judges standing up in that manner before?
Well, sure, but not Judge Bresky. He has a reputation for being very calm and very meticulous with his word choice. And you're right, this is the first time that he stood up and really towered over the courtroom and really pronounced his expectations going forward. It's very obvious that he has had enough with Lori Vallow's antics, that he's not going to allow her to have any type of control over the courtroom. And honestly, it was the last straw for him, because he did tell her that if she continues to do this, that he is going to revoke her pro per status. That is, he's going to revoke her right to represent herself, and that he'll then appoint her an attorney to go forward with the rest of the trial.
Okay, then what would happen though if that was revoked? Would that the public defenders that are advisory counsel right now, they have said before when she wasn't pro per, they would need like a year to really prepare a defense. What would happen to this trial?
There would most likely be a mistrial without prejudice, meaning that the prosecution could bring the trial again. But just like you said, it would cost a ton of time and resources to do this, and the case probably wouldn't be resolved for at least another year.
And so today court begins?
It's going to begin at 10:30.
10:30.
Yeah, so just in a little while, and we have Ryan Pillar taking the stand again, and that will be interesting because he knows the case like the back of his hand. Lori Daybell is going to go and do cross-examination of him. She likes to ask a lot about forensics. Sometimes the questions don't land and seem redundant, but she likes to try and poke holes in a law enforcement agency's investigation like she did in the Chandler case. I would ask you, have you seen any improvement in her conduct or skills since the last trial, or would you say, this is the same person, pro per?
I was thinking about that question actually this morning, preparing for this interview, and I'll tell you, so in the Chandler case, Lori Daybell asked some very good questions and did make her points on cross-examination and then got out. This time around, though, you can really start to see her inexperience on full display because she does not know how to impeach a witness. So, for example, when she was cross-examining Brandon Boudreaux last week, Brandon did say a couple times that he didn't remember, and there were some inconsistent statements. But she didn't know how to bring that out to show the jury that these statements are inconsistent and that this should affect his credibility. And I also see that going forward with the case agent. She wants to make her good points, but when he doesn't say something that you want him to say, you have to be able to impeach him with evidence or some type of exhibit.
All right, I got to wrap you both. We're going to come back with Josh, talk about some of those LA riots.